Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Just In podcast. I'm joined today by Matt from Proofpoint. Good afternoon, Matt. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing really well, thank you. Yeah, you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very good.
Good.
I was just explaining to Matt how load shedding in South Africa works, which is quite interesting, and he witnessed it firsthand. So this is, I think, take 3 of this specific vodcast. But we will endure. We will get this done properly. So yeah. So Matt, welcome to the Just In vodcast. It's great to have you on the show. Very good to have Proofpoint agree to answering some questions. The purpose of the vodcast is to obviously give the people who listen and who watch the vodcast a little bit more insight into Proofpoint, some of the technologies that Proofpoint has. But before we get into this, give us a little bit of history, where you're based, give us some of your hobbies. Yeah.
Okay. A bit about me. Yeah. So I'm Director of Cybersecurity Strategy for Proofpoint, which kind of means I spend most of my time talking about and talking to organizations about their security operations, right? How they can do a little bit more for less, actually. I think probably the most fun thing we get to do is actually when we can help companies kind of streamline their security operations. So actually, they don't have to spend that much more money to get so much better security on the back end. Bit about me, I suppose I've been around IT and cyber for, well over 20 years now, working in the space. But I know personal stuff. For me, at the minute, actually, I'm still buzzing a little bit. I had a great weekend because I'm a football coach, a soccer coach, and I run a girls under 12 team, and we just got our second win in the row. And it's the girls, like literally, they've won 2 games, and this was our second one. So completely buzzing from the performance of the weekend. So that's all good.
Fantastic, congrats. I'm a Liverpool supporter. I don't know if that makes us friends or not.
No, I'll tell you, I'm a Luton Town fan. So we nearly did you the other week, right? Yeah. We nearly did. So it was close.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the video refs need some training. Definitely. All right, well, let's get stuck into this. So what we've done is we've broken down the vodcast into 3 specific areas, which are the 3 technology areas that Proofpoint concentrates on and brings technologies to market, or solutions to market on. And that is specifically the PSAT, and I'll ask you what the PSAT acronym means, DLP, and then email security. So let's get stuck onto the PSAT. So Proofpoint dubs this PSAT. What does PSAT stand for?
It's Proofpoint Security Awareness Training, right? But it's actually much more than just training. It's education. It's general awareness. It is a set of capabilities that organizations can use to raise the level of security awareness that they've got within their company and throughout their employees. So I think one of the biggest challenges that organizations face is a lot of people just go off and say, oh, we do security awareness training, right? And they'll go off and they'll just say once a year, they'll train their people and say, yeah, everyone's trained. Everyone's security aware.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that, right? It just doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
No, it doesn't. Well, let's get into the questions. So can you tell us a bit more about Proofpoint's approach to security awareness training and how it helps organizations boost their employees' cybersecurity knowledge?
Yes. So when you think about security awareness training, we are talking about educating people, right? We're talking about educating the employees. And a lot of people will call your people your last line of defense. But in reality, they should be the first line of defense, because we're the ones that get targeted with these threats, right? The phishing emails are the ones that are hitting us on a daily basis. So we need to be able to identify them. We need to be able to respond to them as individuals, not just in our work life, but in our personal life as well. We need to be much, much more aware. So we built this framework, which is really all around sort of behavioral and learning science. We call it the ACE framework, but it basically stands for assess, change behavior, and then evaluate. ACE, assess, change, and evaluate. And it's actually almost like a circle, because you never stop educating, right? And you never stop learning. So to start off with assess, well, let's look at what threats and what risks are we faced with as individuals? And that actually varies. So that's one thing to kind of consider, is not everyone faces the same level of risks, right? You might be more targeted than me, and you might have different types of threats coming to you. So we need to understand that. We also need to understand what your knowledge looks like as an individual. You know, can you do a couple of assessments for us? Let us know what you know, so we can understand the culture as well within the organization. And then once we've got that, we can start to then work out, right, how do we change that behavior? How do we change the behaviors to the right way? And we can do that through learning, through delivering education out to people, through enforcing education if we need to do that. In like also things like phishing simulations can kind of help us change behavior. And then we need to evaluate that, measure it. How well have we done? Do we need to do more? What do we need to do more of? What we need to do less of? So it's kind of like these sliding scales. But it is a complete circle, because then we go back to reassess, let's change behavior, let's evaluate, and off we go again.
Okay, cool. No, thank you for that, Matt. What are some of the specific cybersecurity topics and threats that Proofpoint's training covers? And how do you keep the content up to date with the ever-changing security landscape?
Yeah, that's a really good one. The honest answer is pretty much everything, because everything is kind of covered in the cybersecurity frameworks now. Because if you think about it, it's not just all about phishing. I mean, phishing is a big one, right?
Yeah.
Clearly, people need to understand phishing. But it isn't just phishing. Yeah, we've got new threats that kind of arrived to the organization. And it's not just malicious threats and malware and things like that. It's also, okay, what challenges do AI technology and ChatGPT pose to my organization? Do I want to educate my people and actually making sure that they're not leaking company information out through these tools as well? So the education and the programs that we've got, the libraries that we've got, and the way that we elect people, customize those as well. The topics are completely broad. Yeah. So for us, we have to spend a lot of time keeping on top of that, right? And that's what we do. We've got loads of people that are writing training, making it engaging, interactive, all the rest of it. But then specifically on the threat side's super interesting, because of course, with Proofpoint, we do email security. We see tons of it. We take these bad threats, we make them into not so bad threats, but they're still the genuine, real world threats that your organization is faced with. And we can turn those into phishing simulations and education material. And so it's not just it's not made up stuff. This is, you're getting trained on what the real stuff looks like.
Yeah, because I think it's important, right? I mean, Proofpoint needs to simulate as near possible as what the attacker would be. I mean, I don't win the lottery over the email if I haven't entered the lottery, right? So I'm a little bit curious on the engagement aspect of this. How does Proofpoint make the security awareness training interactive and engaging for the learners to make sure that the lesson really sticks?
Yeah, so it is about making sure that we train the right people at the right time with the right type of content that suits that person, right? Trying to almost personalize it. And so what might be right for me might be, hey, once, an hour every week I can put that aside and do a little bit of training. That's great. But that might not be right for somebody who works in the retail or somebody who works in industry, that touches a screen every now and again. For them, the education might be best delivered to their mobile phone. And it might be best delivered with a tone that's suitable to their age group, for example. Some people will work well with, kind of really formal delivered training. Other people will want it much, much, much more casual. And so it is a case of actually just not treating everybody the same and trying to be as hyper relevant to that individual as you can. Like we said earlier, you might be targeted with, let's say there were business email compromise threats like fraud, imposter fraud threats. That's the sort of thing we want to educate you on if that's what you're being targeted on. But we need to do that in a way that we know that you're going to consume it. And of course, if we're measuring that, well, we can try it. We can experiment and say, hey, let's deliver it to Justin on his phone, first of all. And let's see how he gets on with that. And okay, now let's try a different time of day and try a different style of content, see how he goes with that as well. And then we can start to shape it and make it work for you. Because if it doesn't, you're not going to learn. It might as well just be one size fits all training.
It needs to be relevant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hyper-relevant, definitely.
No, very good. Could you perhaps share a real-world example of some of the tangible improvements that Proofpoint has delivered through the security awareness training?
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is one of the things, like almost every organization that takes on security awareness training, they probably have some kind of benchmark, first of all, that says, this is the state that we're in. And they're looking to try and work out, what improvement they can make. And some companies will, if they do things like phishing simulation, they might measure it in things like click rate, who's clicking on those phishing simulations. And so once they've done an education program, they might then compare that click rate. We like to look at it slightly different, and we like to look at it overall from a risk perspective and actually help you identify where you're reducing most risk within your organization. And we work with a lot of organizations now to deploy not just standard training, but that custom hyper-relevant stuff to all of their employees. And what you tend to find, and there's a really great example of an insurance organization that once they deployed the security awareness training, they had 5 times as many employees actually reporting then phishing simulations because they'd gone through the training. So now they knew what to spot. And so that was an immediate indicator for that insurance company to say, hey, we now know that people are spotting phishing when it comes through because they've been trained on it. And so we know the education's working. We also know our process of reporting's working as well, and that feedback's working. So that's really, really good. And then they looked at the click rate after a year, and they could see that their click rate had actually dropped down to only about 7% of delivered phishing people were actually clicking on. So from them, that was a reduction of actually about half of real world clicks, if you like, on phishing attempts. So that was pretty good.
Well, I think that leads on to my next question, right? So how does Proofpoint measure the effectiveness of its training programs? Are there any reporting or analytic features that organizations can use within the platform to actually track the progress, right? I think that's important. Yeah. We need to get through the college program and make sure that we graduate on the other side. Is there an enrollment? Is there a report that can be pulled on specific individuals, and almost if you fail, put them back to school or pull them back by a year and train them again?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, there are. So we have there's a bunch of dashboards within the tool that lets security awareness people see exactly what's going on, who are my most risky people, who are not quite so risky, and people can kind of move as threats change. And it's not just in isolation, just who's clicking on the links and who's not doing the training. We can factor in other things, and those other things can be around who's being targeted, for example. That all of that can be kind of factored in so that you can get this real world view. And when it comes to them reporting back to the business to say, hey, what sort of impact is my security awareness training having? You can say, well, when we started out, this is what my risky community looked like. Now, this is what my risky community looks like. Actually, these people come and go and they change over time based on their engagement. And then we can see that if we drop them into this pool and we deliver this type of education to them, that makes a material difference to them as well. So there are lots of measures. I think that's the key point. But when it rolls, all of these measures roll up into one simple dashboard so that the security leader, if the organization has a CISO, for example, that reports to the board, they can just go in with a simple dashboard and say, this is what my state of risk looks like right now. And this is how security awareness is impacting that state of risk for the business.
That's very good. Tell me about customization. I mean, no organization is the same, right? So, can we have certain content for a specific industry and compliancy? I mean, compliance is very important. Every organization has a different level of compliancy, and any other unique security features or security training features that can be incorporated. Because we don't want vanilla these days, right? We want something that is customized and suitable for our organization. So, can it be fully customized?
Yeah, definitely. So you said compliancy, right? Yeah, organizations that face with regulatory compliance, they have a certain amount of tick boxes that they need to meet. And we already said this, one size fits all training. We know it doesn't work. So for that reason, we actually let organizations customize all of our trainings. Right? If they want to go in and they want to apply their own branding, if they want a particular language to appear, if they want particular style of terminology to appear, to make sure it matches their own security programs as well, we offer customization aspects for that. We even offer the ability, working with organizations like yourselves as well, to actually manage that on their behalf as well. So they can kind of come to us and say, hey, we want to do this, but we want it to look like this. We want it to sound like this. So it matches our style. And that's where you can kind of then start to feel, what does the culture of the organization, what does it feel like? And can we make sure that we apply that style throughout the training? So yeah, 100%, that's all available within the customization options.
Good answer. I'm interested in integration. How can Proofpoint's training solutions be seamlessly integrated into the organization's broader security strategy and employee education efforts?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that we touched on already, actually, around the threat side of things. So the threat side of things is super interesting because we know that we can take data that tells us who's being targeted with what, and we can use that within the tools. But similarly, we can share the information back to say, these are my most risky people. And so that we can do something with that, and we can share that back through, APIs as well, so that you can hook it into, say, oh, hey, Matt's in that risky community. Let's make sure that he re-authenticates, perhaps a little bit more throughout the day. And we can feed that back into your authentication platforms like Okta or whatever it happens to be. And so you've kind of absolutely got those options. But similarly, a lot of organizations also have training platforms. They've got their own internal training platforms that they're using as well. And so you can take a lot of the Proofpoint content and feed that through those platforms as well. So there's integrations both on the training side, but there's also integrations both on the reporting and the threat data side as well that we can share to make it more valuable to people. And it's simple. It's through APIs. It's, you can mess about with them yourselves to see what data you can get out of it and then make it more valuable to your organization.
Cool. So DLP. Now this for me is very interesting and super cool, right? I mean, Proofpoint offering a DLP solution, and I think for the viewers and the listeners, I mean, we've always had DLP. I mean, if I go back 15 years, we were speaking about DLP, right? And DLP has become, I think, more and more prevalent today than what it's ever been. And I think the ease of implementation has certainly helped people implement DLP, and CASB has certainly helped with the concept of DLP and pulling DLP a little bit more forward in terms of a forward-thinking approach, and the integrations and the customization, but also the intelligence behind DLP today has certainly made it easier for an organization to deploy. I remember in the past we bought it because the auditors told us to buy it. I think where DLP's moved towards today is it's being purchased for a very specific requirement, and the implementation thereof is being super monitored, and the completion of the project is getting mandated. So DLP for Proofpoint, I think it's one of the best kept secrets. So in Proofpoint's DLP solution, what makes it stand out? What are some of the cool features we can talk about?
Yeah, so you described DLP like the way we've kind of all been brought up on DLP, and quite honestly, DLP sucks, right? It has always been really horrible, and everyone's been mandated to implement it, and it's essentially not. It's not modern. The way we work has changed, right? We've got data up in the cloud. All of our data now sits everywhere. We're using cloud applications all the time. So with traditional legacy DLP tools, organizations kind of struggle with that visibility into that cloud data. And the tools that they're using are kind of essentially siloed, right? It's just everything's in one box and they can't do a lot with it. And you add on to that this nasty endpoint agent that you tend to have to run on your machines that is so invasive that stops you doing things and you don't really understand why. So those are real challenges that people face, and ultimately that leads to frustration. It leads to lack of visibility, and overall it's not a good fit for a lot of organizations. And so people have invested heavily in DLP, but in reality they're not really getting a lot out of it. So we've come along, Proofpoint, with this crazy new approach to DLP, and it is a lightweight, modern approach to DLP to address those specific challenges, to address the fact that how do you manage data in the cloud? How can I control that data in the cloud? So we've built this cloud native architecture that is going to actually use APIs. It's going to hook into your cloud platforms, and it's going to be able to work out what data's where and how it's moving around. Not only that, it's going to help us with behaviors, and it's going to start to give us that visibility into not just what data we're playing with, but how we're interacting with it. Because maybe it's normal for me to, at the end of every quarter, start accessing a lot of financial information. But if it's not normal for me to be doing that 3 weeks into the quarter, a month into the quarter, something like that, maybe that's just of something that we need to raise visibility of. And it's just then an indicator that something different may be happening, particularly if I then perhaps start engaging with Google Drive to start uploading information as well. So DLP's evolved to become more of a kind of a less invasive approach, more of a provide visibility and provide context in what the users are actually doing.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that makes a huge difference, because it's not just, you can't do that. It's a case of, you can do it, but we're gonna keep an eye on what's going on.
Yeah. So how does it do it? I mean, how does DLP figure out what is super confidential, for example? I mean, can you explain some of the scans and the tags on sensitive stuff? And I think for most of the viewers, the tagging and figuring it out is the biggest pain point about DLP, right? Because it's just so much information. I mean, if I take a financial institution, for example, figuring out what is confidential and what to tag is generally the longest process of DLP, or the implementation of DLP. So how does Proofpoint do it? How does it figure this stuff out?
Yeah, definitely. So, because in the legacy DLP world, that's all been a manual process, right? It's, oh, we've got this folder over here. Oh, yeah, highly confidential. And that's a pain. To address that, we've built and developed essentially a number of AI and ML-based tools so that we can actually just go off and kind of scan that. And actually, not one, we can do classification automatically based on the data. So if there's something that's really obvious. But two, we can then factor in how people are engaging with that data. And so tagging that doesn't just become a case of it's this type of data. It becomes a case of it's this type of data and this is how it's used within my organization. And that's something that we can kind of learn. And yes, it's supervised, right? So you as the administrator, you can kind of tweak that and say, yeah, actually, this is my super confidential stuff and only these people should interact with it. So you can then steer it, or you can kind of let it run and let it work it out for itself as to what should be going on. So you've got that. One, you've got customization, but two, it's automation, and it kind of makes things a little bit easier. I think the other point to note is this is DLP not just based on the data itself, but it is based on the user behaviors. And that allows us to capture things like those insider threats. The people that have got access, they've got access to intellectual property, but perhaps they shouldn't be having that when they're working in it remotely, or perhaps they shouldn't be having that if they're uploading it to this particular place. And we can kind of understand their behaviors and then factor in their behaviors. So it's not just all about the data; it's about the context, having much greater context.
That's cool. So I'm curious about some of the sneaky stuff, right? Or perhaps some of the sneaky behavior, not really the stuff that an employee may want to do or get involved with. How does Proofpoint handle the sneaky stuff, like the USB drives, or some of the other email compromise of data?
Yeah. So we look at DLP as kind of a multi-channel thing. So there's a lightweight agent that is not invasive, that just sits and observes on the user's endpoint, which you can use to control policies. So you can have those policies that say, hey, well, actually USBs, we shouldn't be doing that. Or maybe it's just USBs, okay, we'll observe and we'll share that log information back. But when you factor in our kind of insider threat management as well, we can then actually start to look at, what's going on the screen. So you've got the option that organizations can actually say, maybe you're a financial company, you go back to that regulation one, you can't be sharing certain information over Teams, for example. So you kind of want to put some restrictions in that. Okay, that's fine. But what if I then start doing it over, I don't know, WhatsApp Messenger, because I can see that through the web browser or whatever it happens to be. That combination of kind of factors can trigger an event which says, actually, we're just going to capture a few screenshots now. And that can then be shared automatically back to the SOC in a single case to say, okay, so this is the event. Matt's been interacting with WhatsApp. We think he's shared some financial information. Here's what went on the screen. Do we need to take action, yes or no?
That is cool. That is really cool, because I think if you want to send anything out today, it's certainly not going to be over an endorsed platform. It's going to be a WhatsApp. It's going to be a Telegram. It's going to be something sneaky. So it's great that Proofpoint has the ability to actually monitor that. Yeah,
definitely, and it can be accidental as well. I mean, I think that's one of the other big areas that we like to cover is do you know the amount of times that people have emailed the wrong person with the wrong data, or they thought they BCC'd the world, but actually they put it in the toolbar, and being able to capture that accidental data loss use case as well is super, super important, and that's where things like DLP on the email channel and kind of comes into play. But the nice thing is when you combine all these channels, we talked about the cloud data, we talked about email, we talked about endpoint. You can combine all of these channels in that single management platform. It just makes it so much easier for everyone.
So talking about management, you mentioned one important buzzword. I mean, it's been going for quite some time now. You said the word SOC. So when I look at the portfolio that Obscure has, we've got quite a large portfolio of vendors. And I think today integration is extremely important. So what are some of the integration tools or the integration with the other platforms look like from a Proofpoint perspective? For example, SOC and SIM. I mean, we have SIMs in SOC these days to monitor data. But how does that integration work from a Proofpoint perspective? And can it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Because and we take this kind of same approach across our entire portfolio, actually, is that everything we do, we have to recognize that, yeah, Proofpoint does a lot and we can help organizations with a lot of stuff. But we only do a certain amount, and we have to recognize that organizations, their security stack is much, much bigger. They've probably got other processes going on. They've got other products going on. You guys might be helping them out with various bits and bobs. You've got lots of different products. Your security stack needs to talk to each other.
Yeah.
If it is not talking to each other, you're running silos, you're running management challenges, you've got admin challenges, overheads, everything that go with it. So our approach is open as much as possible, share through APIs as much as possible, create canned standard integrations with the key tools that everyone's asking us to do that with, whether that's things like, oh, hey, you're running Microsoft Defender on your endpoint. That's great. Let's start sharing some threat information with it so it can help there. Or there's a DLP incident. We need to make sure that comes out in your Splunk SIM or whatever you happen to be running there. And so again, it's making sure that we can kind of package that up. But equally, if you're running the craziest SIM SOC platform in the world that nobody seems to integrate with, that's okay too, because the APIs are there and we can customize that stuff.
Very cool. So to lighten the load a bit, do you have any cool Proofpoint stories or Proofpoint DLP stories where Proofpoint saved the day?
So these are always tricky to talk about, right? Because you have to make sure that you put it in the right context. Because more often than not, organizations they don't necessarily want to share their stories with the whole world.
Yeah.
But there are some really, really good examples, particularly the ones that seem to be coming through at the moment around kind of insider threat and the loss of intellectual property, where we've got, for example, pharmaceutical companies that are actually, you imagine what the intellectual property for a pharmaceutical company looks like and the cost and the risk associated with that. Being able to use the insider threat management capabilities within that sort of DLP portfolio, the insider threat is one piece of the jigsaw, and it's something that you can kind of deploy first and then add on DLP channels on top of it. But having that to start off with, actually allowed one particular pharmaceutical organization start to realize that somebody's behavior was changing and that actually they were looking to try and share I want to say recipes. I'm sure they're not called recipes in pharmaceutical world, but share that recipe out with another organization because they knew they were leaving. They'd already handed their notice in, and at that point, essentially they could be put on a watch list to check their behaviors. Their behaviors changed. That was picked up, and so for them that was absolutely huge. I mean, the end result I think was legal law cases and things that kind of followed on. But then, beyond that, there were much simpler ones. The organizations that have just gone for you used the term CASB earlier on. It's DLP in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
And CASB all combined because it's looking at logs, it's looking at data. But we had a particularly large food processing and packaging organization. I think they had about 28,000 people that were accessing sensitive data all around the world. And for them, they were actually able to take that old legacy DLP that we started talking about that really couldn't see anything up in the cloud and that was just putting a burden on their endpoints. For them, they could actually just combine that into a single tool and a single management platform. Now, that might not sound like a great story about crazy data loss and how we stopped it. Why it was a great story was because the cost savings that they had from an admin and security team perspective were huge.
Yeah.
Because they only needed now one person to kind of interact with that platform rather than all these different people trying to manage we had someone on the endpoint team, you had someone trying to scan servers and someone trying to do all these different stuff, and it was just too complex. So simplifying DLP, taking this more modern cloud-based approach to DLP is a huge win.
I fully agree. I think simple wins at the end of the day, and simple gets the project completed too. So keep it simple. So the security threats, as with the security awareness training, are always evolving, right? How does Proofpoint stay ahead of the curve to make sure that the Proofpoint DLP solution remains effective?
Yeah, so for us, it is all about making sure that we understand how data moves and how people interact with that data, and actually understand what those behaviors kind of look like. And so when we see things in the world start to change, like ChatGPT is a great example. I mean, I use it every single day, right? Hey, Matt, can you do this webinar? Can you do a podcast? I need a little write-up of what it's going to be all about. And I think, I need it to sound a bit better than the way I can make it. So I use ChatGPT. Now, if I was using ChatGPT and that was that pharmaceutical company and I was trying to work out the impact of the recipe that was changing in there, that poses a challenge. So yeah, again, going back to that same example, the way we kind of stay ahead is actually we start to now look at how data is being shared through these other platforms. So through AI specifically, through how AI tools are impacting, what could we be losing? Can we apply controls over it? Can we let people use it in a controlled way so that we understand how they're using it? So it's fine for Matt to do his webinar, write up on ChatGPT, but it's not fine for somebody else to share the crown jewels out through that route. Cool.
So last section, email security. Now, email's been around for a very, very long time. I think most people know long before our WhatsApp communication tools were out, long before the Telegrams, long before Teams and Zoom, we used email. And I think email is going to be around for a very long time still to come. And I think it's quite exciting for Proofpoint to speak about their email security from a South African and African perspective, because we've just completed our Africa tour where we launched in Kenya and Nigeria as well as Mauritius. And it's still a little bit of a secret as to Proofpoint in the email security market, especially on the continent. So I think this is an awesome platform to sort of launch it on, and for Matt Cooke to tell us a little bit about the email security. So from a Proofpoint perspective, email communication. How does Proofpoint secure it and stop phishing and really get to the nuts and bolts of email security? And tell us a little bit about the email security from Proofpoint.
Yeah, so you used a great word there, which was platform, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of organizations in the past have thought, I can buy email security. It's this one thing, and it does spam and it does malware, and it stops that. That's what it does. Email, the threats that we face on email have evolved, and they continue to evolve. I mean, I keep mentioning AI, and it's obviously big buzzwords, but it's starting to have actually an impact on the threats that we're faced with, right? All of a sudden, those phishing emails actually look a lot better because people are using those AI tools to make them look a lot better.
Yeah.
So from a Proofpoint perspective, we have to make sure, in the same way that you asked about DLP, in the same way that you asked about security awareness training, how are we staying ahead? Well, the way that we're staying ahead is that we are constantly evolving our own engines and our own technology, continuously investing back into that platform that we have that actually is multiple layers of platform that help us understand, what's good and what's bad. I mean, to give you an idea, we see in excess of 3 billion of the world's emails every single day, enterprise customers' emails every single day. Actually, we've got whole bunch of stuff running in telcos and consumer side, which actually gives us a huge amount more than that. But the 3 billion of the enterprise stuff then starts to allow us to understand exactly what's going on. So not only can we pick those threats and stop them, it actually amazingly starts to allow us to start to predict when you might be facing a particular type of threat as well. And that's how email security has evolved. I mean, this is a great example of it's not a great example. It involves email threats, but they're never great. But no. You imagine you're a retailer, right? You sell furniture through a particular all your stores all around the world, and there's a particular piece of flat pack furniture that one company makes for you and they ship in for you. That particular company, the person that works in finance, they send invoices in every single month. They became compromised, right? Maybe that company, it was only a small organization, they clicked on a phishing link, the account became compromised. And the attacker at that point has access to the email account. They know they send emails in once a month. They know what the invoices look like. They can even jump on the email thread and start to leverage that thread. So when the threat comes in, this isn't a threat that looks like it's come from that company.
Yeah.
It did come from that company. And that's the massive challenge that organizations face right now, because the threats are not just pretending to be there. Like they're real. They're coming from that company. So what we have to then start to do is say, okay, do we have any indicators in here that suggest anything's changed? And this goes back to the conversation we had around DLP, is understanding content and context.
Yeah.
Is that invoice coming in? Have things changed? Anything changed in there? Things like bank account numbers, or we picked up stuff like that that's changed. Maybe the language, the tone that's being used. Maybe the email that's come from you to me, you're applying a little bit more urgency. and suggesting that I need to pay something a little bit quicker. Or maybe you haven't asked me to pay anything before. And so we need to understand the context. And this actually feeds in massively into security awareness training because, maybe just you applying a little bit of urgency trying to get me to pay a bill, maybe that's normal because I'm a bit slow paying my bill. So maybe I don't want to block that email, but I just want to give the recipient a little indicator in the banner, perhaps at the top of the email that says, hey, Justin's applying a little bit much urgency here.
Yeah.
Just do your checks and balances and make sure. So, email security has evolved massively. It's not just a case of, is it good? Yes or no, let it in. It's a case of, can we understand it? Not just understand it as it comes through, understand its life cycle as it sits in the inbox, because maybe it's changed as well. And maybe we need to go in and take it out because that link changed to be malicious over time as well. So there's so much more to it now. I could talk forever on it.
No, it's a good answer. Thank you, Matt. Tell me a little bit more about TAP and what is TAP and the significance of TAP in email security. And I've purposely left it as TAP so that you can explain to the viewers what is Proofpoint TAP.
Yeah, so this is part of the platform. This is one of those layers in the platform. It stands for Targeted Attack Protection. Essentially, it is a way of us. If you think about email security, the very basic stuff, the stuff that we've all been buying for years, kind of happens at the front. Is it come from a known bad place? Can we just drop it at that level? Is there something? Is it a lookalike domain? Is it really, really easy to spot, find, get rid of it? TAP helps us find the stuff that's not so easy to spot. TAP is again, actually in itself is produced of multiple layers, and a lot of those layers involve AI. A lot of those layers have various machine learning engines within there that help us spot those more advanced threats, the ones that we were just talking about, like for example some of those imposter threats and those supplier threats coming through. So it gives us that, and it helps block all those. But what it also gives us, that probably no one else is giving you at the moment, is the level of visibility of what's going on as well. So that it wasn't just a case of, hey, we stopped this email and it was bad. It was, hey, we stopped this email. It looked like it was leading to ransomware, or it could have done based on our experience, and it was targeted at Justin.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, it came from this group of threat actors that we've previously identified over here, and these are the types of campaigns that they run. And of course, now imagine that data and feeding that back into security awareness training. And all of a sudden now we can start educating Justin to say, hey, actually, ransomware attacks coming at you right now. Let's just make sure you understand about clicking on links and opening attachments and feeding that in. So it's that whole platform, that whole circle loop that kind of goes around so that we can feed that data across and connect it in.
That's very neat. Very neat. Next term, DMARC. Let's jump into what DMARC is specifically, because I don't think a lot of people actually know what the term stands for or what the significance of DMARC. And how does Proofpoint's DMARC solution work, and how does that implementation work?
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you what it stands for because I always get it wrong, and it doesn't. Honestly, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't.
What it is most important. It's email authentication. It's when I send an email to your company, that when that email arrives, you've got a mechanism to say, actually, this came from Matt. It came from Proofpoint. It was validated. It came from one of their known systems that's been authenticated and is allowed to send me that email. So what that means is you take away that risk of someone pretending to be Proofpoint and sending messages from random servers and coming into you. So it's a mechanism for you ultimately to trust my email a little bit more. Now, that doesn't solve that case that I become compromised and they're using my system.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. We still need protection in there for that. But it does limit the risk of exposure and allows you to authenticate my emails. And then, similarly, from a Proofpoint perspective or any organization's perspective, it starts to help them protect their brand a little bit as well, so that your emails become trusted. The emails that you send to people, they're your emails. And there is a mechanism in place that says if it comes from us, but it doesn't meet our criteria, well, you can just ditch that and put it in the bin.
Yeah.
And that's become massively more relevant all of a sudden for every organization in the world, because two big email companies, Google and Yahoo, have recently turned around and said that actually, if you're sending more than, I think it's something like 5,000 emails to us on our platforms in any one day, and you're not using email authentication, so you're not using DMARC, you're not using some of the other things that go with it, SPF and DKIM. If you're not using that technology,
Yeah.
your emails are not going to get delivered anymore. So email authentication and DMARC has really now become an entry level that every organization needs to be looking at right now in order to say, we want to make sure our emails are getting delivered. It is not okay for our emails to just be ignored, our real emails. But if we're not doing DMARC, you can no longer rely on your emails getting delivered. That's the world that we're moving towards. So it's really, really important for people to start thinking about.
Good answer. How does Proofpoint combat spam and unwanted emails?
Oh, yeah, that's just the boring stuff, right? That's the stuff that it just clogs up your time. There's the productivity drain.
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge. So we look at, who's sending the bad stuff, who's sending that stuff on a regular basis, so that we can start to, we filter all that out. Individually, though, there are in people's minds, they were like, oh, this is spam. But the reality is it was a mailing list that at some point in the time you didn't opt out of. And so you automatically got signed up for. And so we build in tools to allow you just to block out those addresses and block out those domains. So there's the stuff that goes on the platform level that says, yeah, the real bad, the really annoying stuff that shouldn't be doing it, that fine, let's get rid of it there. But if it's real valid stuff, maybe it's low priority. We can even actually automatically just put that in a low focus inbox for you. So that you're like, oh yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it. And then I can go through that. I'll just block that. Don't want that again. Fine. Won't see it again. It's gone. Problem goes away. Productivity goes back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
Cool. Can you highlight the key features of Proofpoint's advanced threat protection and its effectiveness against advanced threats? And I think the advanced threats term has been thrown around quite a bit over the past couple of years, and quite rightly so, because the threats are becoming smarter, or the people behind the threats are becoming smarter. So what are some of the key features in Proofpoint's stack from an advanced threat protection perspective?
Yeah, and so the way I guess we look at advanced threats, one's who it's coming from. If it's coming from, maybe it's a particularly known threat actor group, maybe it's even nation state related. And two, what's the prevalence of that threat look like? Is this something that's just been made for Justin, or is this something that's going to hit, 1 million people around the world at the same time? If it's 1 million people around the world at the same time, it's probably not an advanced threat. But if it's something that maybe we haven't seen before, that's something that we really have to think about. We have to need to be able to spot it. So what have we got in place to spot it? Well, yeah, there are all the checks and balances that go through in the platform. That targeted attack protection piece is key here to identifying it. Again, we'll look at things like context. We'll look at links in emails, where those links are going. We rewrite those links if we need to. We'll go and scan those websites automatically for you. So if it was something that was trying to make you log into a web page, it was credential phishing, we'll pick that up. We'll have identified that, and then that will get blocked at that point if necessary. If there's a link that looks safe, it goes off to something, it could be legitimate. Maybe we just rewrite those links so that when you click on them, we're going to take you through isolation. That's all built in there as well. If it was something that had an attachment, then clearly that attachment will do that, for want of a better phrase, that detonation of that attachment, right? Open it up in the cloud automatically for you in advance. What can we find in here? Are there behaviors in this file that shouldn't be happening? What else is going on? So you've got that knowledge that, that before it arrives in your inbox, that somebody else has kind of opened it up. Now, a lot of that's automated in sandboxes and everything that goes on. But the really, really super interesting stuff, if there's suspicion it's coming through from a nation state actor, one of the things that you shouldn't underestimate is the power of the person in the threat research team. Because one thing we've got at Proofpoint is the threat research team that goes all around the world. And when the systems flag something up like that, they're able to dive on and have a look as well. And so that they can get involved and say, yeah, okay, we need to pay much, much more attention for that. And again, everything doesn't necessarily have to happen in line. Things can find their way through into the inbox, but they're able to jump on that and say, actually, we need to go back. We need to talk to that person. We need to understand is there any exposure? Have we got any exposure in that? Have they clicked on any links in that? And have all that data to hand immediately. And that's one of the important parts of visibility. It's not just about everything that's being blocked. It's about what got through as well. Tell me what got through. Be honest. What did get through? And that's one thing that we really pride ourselves on, is giving all of that information to organizations that we work with and having that in a single dashboard for them.
Very good. In the context of remote work, now remote working wasn't invented by COVID, even though we certainly broke the limits of remote working. But how does Proofpoint ensure email security for dispersed teams globally or working from home?
So it's a good point. I mean, I'm at home at the minute, right? Doesn't look like it. It says background looks like I'm in London. I'm actually in the southwest of England at the moment, working from home. And for me, everything's the same, right? From an email perspective, everything's great here because I know that the emails that come through to me, even if they've got links in, those links are getting rewritten, and so that when I'm clicking on them, I'm going through isolation platforms in the cloud. And so even if they're taking me to a bad site, that's going to be kept away from my machine. So we leverage the power of that cloud technology and make the most of the dispersed networks that we're working on, so that we can use platforms in the cloud that are closest to that person in order to make sure that the bad stuff doesn't actually make it down to the endpoint, or it doesn't make it into my account. And that's the other point, is it kind of hooks in also to that DLP platform that we talked about, and that CASB technology as well.
Yeah.
Because if my account did become compromised because I clicked on a phishing link, well, we need to know, and we need to be able to piece that all together. And if their data was lost from a cloud account in Office 365, well, okay, how did it get lost? Where did it all start? Well, there's every chance it started with a phish. And so one of the benefits of the Proofpoint platforms is that we piece all of that together and give you that full view to say, phishing link, came to Mac, clicked on it, entered username and password. From that point, we saw then the account session token being picked up by someone, and it was then accessed from this particular place. They accessed this data, and off it went from there. So all of these components at Proofpoint, one of the things is super, super important. We work on them independently. So it's email security. It's security awareness training. It's DLP. But when you get to the point of getting multiple of those, connect them up, and you get then the power of the value of them all actually working together and giving you that information.
I actually had a last question, but that summed it up pretty well, but I'll ask it anyway. If a company is new to Proofpoint, what initial steps would you recommend for them to establish an email security posture, a solution? I mean, what would step one be?
For me, it's get visibility. What you don't know at the minute is probably the trickiest thing. You don't know what you don't know. And one thing that we can do is tell you what you don't know, tell you what's currently getting through. Everyone has got some form of email security gateway at the moment, but nobody has visibility of it unless you're using the Proofpoint platform. So we can hook in. We have what we call a rapid risk assessment, particularly if you're using something like Office 365. This is really easy. Even if you're not, actually, we can kind of run this as a proof of concept anyway. It's super, super easy. It then allows us to show you what's being missed, what's getting through, what does your exposure look like. And if you're exposed, if we see BEC threats, if we see ransomware threats, if we see these things coming through, what happens with them from there? And actually, just having that level of visibility, what we tend to find is most organizations can look at that and immediately then cost justify that based on the cost of the risk. We want to reduce the risk to the business. And so actually, that then helps us fund the investment in order to start deploying that technology. So just get the visibility, first of all. Rapid risk assessment. The simplest way is, it's a really, really quick setup, and we'll go back and look over your last 2 weeks of data through your inboxes and tell you what we think is still residual in there, and then maybe look at it for the next couple of weeks going forward. Get together, do a report. Here's what you missed. Brett, let's talk about it from there.
Like it. Matt, any parting last words from your side?
Other than I hope Luton Town beat Liverpool when we play them again, but I think start the journey. I think that's the thing. Just start the journey with visibility. Even if it's a DLP journey, start that with visibility. Don't think of DLP anymore as just being blocking. It's just get that visibility first of all, and once you can see that what's going on, that's when you can then really start to make a difference with the security and the risk exposure for each organisation.
Very good. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Cooke. Matt, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Your insights are valuable. I hope we take this forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate your time as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.